So here we go. So the other side of Kanban. So typically at events like this, when we talk about Kanban, our focus is on the economic benefits we derive from using Kanban, how our organisations can get better, how they can make more money. We talk about risk management, we talk about portfolio management, all of these sorts of things. But when we look at Kanban through a different lens, we see the people. So I'd kind of like to talk about how Kanban helps us make the working environment just that bit better for the people in our organisations. The reason I want to talk about this is kind of born out of regret. A number of years ago, I had the opportunity to lead an agile change, and I had come from it was my first chance to do this. I'd come from an investment bank. We were doing XP, and what I wanted to do is go to this new organisation and basically lift what I'd seen at the investment bank, how we were working there, and apply it to this new organisation. So I went about doing some various training exercises with the teams, introduced them to TDD, all the kind of agile rituals, etc. And it became apparent there was a bit of a divide. There was people within this group who were enthusiastic and interested, and there was another kind of part of the group who weren't. They were kind of resisting the change. They didn't feel comfortable with it. So at the time, I kind of judgmentally categorised them as the kind of geeks, the guys you really want, the guys with the right mindset, and then the kind of 95 people who really didn't care. My mind has changed in that sense. So we took the team that were enthusiastic. We left the guys who weren't so enthusiastic to sort of keep the lights on in the old system while we developed the new one. The guys we supplemented the guys in the new team with experience from the outside. And we went on and did some work, and the organisation was kind of happy with that. But my regret was born from the fact I watched the people in the other team really begin to dislike the work. A number of them kind of left work through stress-related illness. I actually remember one guy just basically getting up and walking out the office. And what we kind of lacked there, that kind of approach to change lacked, is this idea of respect for people. This is a very loaded term, I guess, so let me give you my kind of definition of how I feel that this is. So the first thing is the understanding that people come to work each day to do a good job. Nobody gets up in the morning and goes, I'm going to go in and I'm going to do the worst job I can do. I'm going to just try and destroy the place. People don't do that. And generally, if people are doing a bad job, it's because they're in a bad system. I think I recall Jim tweeting this just yesterday. We don't have an appreciation for a system. We don't appreciate the effects the system has on the performance of work. Deming's 95.5 was mentioned this morning. 95% of the performance of an organisation is attributable to the system, 5% to the individual. The other thing we neglected in this was to respect the kind of innovative capabilities of the individuals across the organisation. If you read it's The Future of Management by Gary Hamel, he talks about the 100 years so since Taylor introduced the scientific management. And he says there's been no real kind of major revolutionary change. He does identify one kind of innovation in management, or a number, but one of them is Toyota's ability to harness the creative abilities, innovative abilities of the people who worked in their organisation. What we do, or what I did, and what I've seen in other organisations as well, is we neglected this. And we didn't attend to their needs. We didn't attend to the needs of the people in these systems, in these organisations. So what do I mean by attend to needs? Well, if you've kind of on Twitter and you follow Bob Marshall, the flow chain sensei, he's been recently talking about what he calls the Antimatter Principle. This is the idea, well, it's antimatter because antimatter is the most powerful energy source. And he thinks this idea of attending to folks' needs is one of the most powerful principles that we can have in our organisations. He has it as his most simplified rule of product development. So what does he mean by that? So pay attention to everyone's needs. Everyone being, as he categorises them, doers, buyers, sponsors, etc. everyone who's involved. And needs, well, the needs that I'm going to kind of try and discuss as we go through are things like inclusion, understanding, personal satisfaction, happiness, and safety. So what I want to do is kind of go through the Kanban method, point out the principles and practices that I think help us attend to folks' needs. I'm not really talking about the deep, meaningful needs that people have, but I don't think Kanban can give us that on its own, but I think it can help us like unpeel the onion a little bit and get a little bit closer to satisfying people's needs. So the first one is inclusive. I think Kanban method's inclusive. It's the idea of inclusion for those involved. So if we look at the principles, we have start with what we do now. This is very inclusive. This is the idea of we're not going to come in and value stream map your process and design out the waste. What we're going to do is going to start with what we've got. We're going to agree to pursue incremental and evolutionary change. We're going to come to agreement as a team to make small, safe, comfortable changes as we move forward. We're going to respect current roles, responsibilities, and job titles. Again, it's not about identifying the wasteful role within the group, but we say initially, there's an honest element to this, that these changes might evolve, might come out of our improvements as we move forward. And then, which I think stands out on its own as inclusive, is the idea of encouraging active leadership at all levels. This is back to the point I was making a second ago about harnessing the innovative capabilities of everyone within our organisation. So, if we take our attending to folks' needs, our Antimatter Principle as the heart here, I reckon that the Kanban principles give us this kind of baseline of inclusion, like everyone involved. Next we have the idea of shared understanding. So this was kind of my view of the world when I was a software developer 10 years ago. This is how I saw work. There was me, and then there was some stuff that I had to do. And I don't know if anybody's read David's recent series of posts. He talks about the manager as a dating agent, where the work would come in and you'd find the right partner for the work. That's kind of how I experienced it. I think it went a wee bit further, and the managers, some managers I've worked with in the past as a developer, were chaperones as well. They wanted to kind of hang around and make sure that the date went well. And then our understanding grows a little bit as we kind of start with our agile ritual of stand-ups. We can see a snapshot in time in the day, who's working on what, how well they're getting on, and who's blocked. But the rest of the system is still quite opaque. We don't really get a full view of everything that's going on. So then we visualize, which is number one practice. So we now have a view of our entire system. Here is my simple software development system board, or Get Kanban board, or as Toby pointed out a while back, it's the hipster board. So we now have this complete view of our system. We can see what others are doing. We can then maybe begin to empathize with others when they have problems with what they're doing. We have our humble post-it note, as David mentioned this morning, which can help us visualize that a little bit more. We'll add things that say when work is moving, when work is stalling, when work is blocked. So our understanding is growing. Our need for understanding of what's going on around us can begin to be satisfied with a visualization. Work item types, we have our little red squares here are identifying the kind of defects or whatever the team are working on. We now begin to understand the failure load across our system, all of the problems that we have to deal with. We have class of service, our blue tickets there. We now have an understanding of what our customers' needs are from our team. Going a little bit further and adding in another one of the practices, the idea of making process policies explicit. We begin as individuals to understand the needs of those either side of us. So as a developer, I understand the needs of the tester, what we need to do to get the work in a right state for them to be prepared to carry on and play their part in the role. We understand as well what our criteria is for making choices for pool as well. So by visualizing and making process policies explicit, we sort of begin to satisfy our need for understanding. So intrinsic motivation. Who's read Dan Pink's Drive? So, okay. So I'll quickly summarise for those who haven't. And Dan Pink talks about, in Drive, the idea that extrinsic motivation, the idea of reward and punishment, the carrot and stick, only works for simple algorithmic roles, simple algorithmic work that we do. When we go into the realm of knowledge work, which we are in, this no longer works as a way of motivating. What we need is autonomy, mastery, and purpose for motivation. But it's not just, motivation again is one of these organisational needs. You need to motivate to work, but the intrinsic motivation gives us personal satisfaction, he suggests, as well. So we can maybe build a need, satisfy a need here for personal satisfaction in our work. Deming also kind of touches on this in his system of profound knowledge when he talks about the theory of psychology and understanding our needs that way. So autonomy, how do we get autonomy through Kanban? I was at the Kanban leadership retreat about a year and a half ago, and Arne Rock put up a session. The question is, what is pull? So I'm thinking, I'm at a leadership retreat, somebody's asking what pull is. I think we should go and join that session. And so Arne asked us to put up on the board here what our understanding of pull and push are. So if we focus on pull, we kind of divided this into two camps. So here's one of was what I put up. Selection of work based on capacity. And that was generally those kind of things as we described as pull system. But on the other side, people were putting up things of like decide to do, and that was the idea of pull behaviours. And pull behaviours, to me, is this whole idea of choice. Choice gives us autonomy. We can, within certain constraints of our system, make a choice. Here we have our WIP limit has created the choice for us, and we can choose to, as the developer in this point, you can choose to go and help test or go and pair with another developer. There is choice there in what we do. So limiting WIP can help lead to autonomy, satisfy our need for autonomy. Mastery is the second of the intrinsic motivators. So again, we have our WIP limit that's given as the slack. We can make a choice. Our choice here, my simple example is, we have a developer who maybe wants to go and pair with another developer to learn something, to increase their own skills, or increase sort of team liquidity, even help the whole system, whole team. Or we can work on this, what seems to be a growing queue in front of test, and we can look to improve our system, so attempt to master the system and improve the system. So yeah, so we've decided there's some policy we can enact or something we can do for developers in order to help workflow for test. So by improving collaboratively, limiting WIP, we've kind of come towards mastery possibly, or we're opening the door towards it. Then we have the idea of a need for purpose. This is a bit more straightforward, I guess. Well, our purpose is fairly clear. It's A, improvement, it's A, getting the work across the board and delivering the work, achieving the completion of the work. And there's also the idea of improvement and managing flow. So managing flow help us lead towards purpose, possibly. Our need for purpose. And then belonging. Well, belonging's kind of, I guess it's kind of wrapped up in a number of things, I've said already, but we have, as a team here, we're working towards the goal of delivering this work, this item across the board. And what I've taken from Claudio Peroni is this idea of celebrating that work. So in the penultimate column of the board, having a ready to celebrate. So instead of work just being done, it's done every day, this is the board in my office at the moment. We queue up work at the end of the day, so everything that goes through done. At the end of our board, well, before it comes to done, when it's finished with our test team, we queue it all up in the morning and we go through each item, and there's a kind of round of applause, a bit of a cheer. People just get a warm feeling from that completion of work. You can imagine what that's like in Glasgow on on a Monday morning. It's more of a groan sometimes, but the idea's there. So, where are we now? Visualising and possibly help us to go towards our need for belonging. In flow, so flow, in this sense, flow, I'm talking about Mihai Csikszentmihalyi's idea of flow, the idea of immersion in work. So firstly, how do we get there? What is it about Kanban that helps us get there? So we have limiting our WIP, means, as Jim's book talks about the idea of reducing the existential overhead, the number of things that you have to think about. So we're reducing the multitasking, we're getting to focus on one thing. Can maybe help us get towards flow, immersion. We also have, again with Jim's book, the Zeigarnik effect. So when work's done, it's something where we can complete and take out of our mind. We're no longer kind of having to sort of combat in our mind the fact that we've still got something to complete. So that is one element of how limiting WIP can help us get towards flow. Possibly as well that we've visualised our work, and these kind of irritating distractions of how you're getting on with that, when is that going to be done, are no longer there. The work is visualised, and our managers can look at the work and go, that's how it's getting on. I don't have to go and seek updates from everyone around the team. So that's great. Yeah, that lets us to get, you know, to this state of flow. But what does that matter in our personal needs for happiness? So if you're familiar with Martin Seligman, he has this theories of positive psychology. He has kind of 3 basic ideas that lead to happiness. The first is, he calls it the pleasant life. This is the idea of experience and amplifying experience. So I think of this as like the rock star life, yeah? So you get to play in front of a crowd, and that's great, you get feedback from that. And then spend the rest of your life, you know, with a Coke habit because you want to amplify the experience and keep it going. The third and the kind of highest level of happiness he suggests come from the meaningful life, and this is the life of purpose, contributing to something bigger than yourself. So the Mother Teresa, you know, that kind of idea. But maybe that's maybe a high goal to set, but you know what I mean. You're contributing to something larger than yourself. And then to link back to flow, he talks about the good life, and actually reaching flow is something that he suggests that gives us an inner happiness. So, back to our need for, well, I've said flow here, but I guess it's our need for happiness. Visualising, limiting WIP can help maybe create the conditions for us to get there. We'll go towards there. So finally, safety. If you were in Ian Carroll's session earlier on, I've kind of stolen this idea from him. So here we have a team. This is our ops team. They have multiple services that they service, departments, sorry, they service, the call centre, sales, finance department, development department, etc. And all of their work goes through one of these ticketing systems, and except when it doesn't, and people kind of make the direct connections and say, could you do this for me, please? I think Ian called it sort of walk by work, you know, where you just come over and ask for the additional thing. What kind of happens here is maybe when it comes to email, there's maybe an element of coercion involved when we CC in the various higher-ups in the organisation and to try and apply a little bit of pressure. And then when it goes beyond that, we've got the angry boss standing over and saying, you know, you must do this because the world will collapse without it. And that kind of, I guess, could lead to various kind of things that are, we don't enjoy. We don't know what we're going to do next, don't get time to think, work's thankless, stressful. There can be certain tensions about why people are making them do this work and why they don't follow the process, working late nights and then, whatever else. So what, I guess, Ian suggests when he designed his board, we've got this idea of it's a shared service, so there's multiple points in where work comes in, but the important thing here is, which potentially creates the environment for safety, is the buffer between the team, where they can pull directly from this work as opposed to having work pushed on top of them. He mentioned it called a floodgate this morning. This is the floodgate. This helps stop overloading the team with work. So it gives them an element of safety to do that. So here we've included by visualising, limiting WIP, creating a buffer, we can create an environment that's potentially safe for our teams and meet that need. And that, I believe, is me. Thank you.